Hey you, I'm the Queen of Shade. Welcome to the interview. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and hit my Cash App to support your favorite content creator. Now let's get to the interview. Mwah.
I can think about a million reasons why you need to burn in hell. You're a liar and a cheater, a con artist telling tales. Been rejected, disrespected, boy, your abuse never fails. I'm so done, boy, really done, boy, now I'm staying to myself. I'm so stoic. 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 I'm so stoic.
Salutations, Dufos. This is your fabulous leader, the Queen of Shade, the only Queen of Shade, the trademarked Queen of Shade, coming to you with a special presentation. In this presentation, we're going to talk to someone very special, someone at the center of everything that I do, someone who has been there through the ups, the downs, the attacks, the battles, the triumphs, the resiliency, the still going, the keep going, the artist life is hell, but keep going. Someone that has been through that all with me. We're going to hear from a very special person today about a very special perspective, a perspective that I am quite sure will enlighten you about this person and help this person as well. You know, these things, all that I do, all the gifts and the talents that I have that I show the world, it's very, very cathartic even for me. It helps me heal, helps me grow. And this person has done the same through my work. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to me. To me. The reason for this conversation today with you guys is because it's the winter time. And if you don't know anything about mental illness, especially bipolar disorder type 1, acute anxiety disorder, and PTSD, the winter makes me sad. The winters are very hard for me. But somehow, for 40 years, I have endured winter after winter after winter, and I still seem to come out all right. However, this year, I went into a depression. I didn't work for a week. I didn't do anything for about a week. I was in a deep depression and I didn't understand why. I had a lot going on in my head and I had to sort it out. I sought professional help. I do have a psychiatrist and I do have a therapist. I do have my grandmother, who's an accredited retired teacher, educator. And last but not least, I have myself to reason with and to try to determine what the issue is or was. As a man that didn't have a lot of help growing up, that was forced to be a parentified child, to be responsible not only for himself, but for his siblings at a very early age, it didn't leave much room for failure or error. It bred someone that needs to be in control all the time. It bred someone whom understands that things don't happen quickly. I usually hanker down, and ride out the storm. And I know that no matter how long the storm will be, that eventually I'll get to the other side of it and see the clouds and the sun and blue sky again. I was very depressed because for the last 16 years, I've been in a position that I'm not accustomed to. I've been in a position that was not comfortable for me because of how my life went. I was used to suffering. I was used to the grind. I was used to never receiving help. No matter how many times I screamed at heaven and begged God and cried for help, no matter how many times I asked my family for help, I was used to having to go outside of my family to get help. That's where my doctors come in. That's where my therapist comes in. That's where my psychiatrist comes in. And I'm going to start off by saying I had a conversation with my therapist and psychiatrist in the same day. It was a lot. And I was speaking to them about my personal issues with my person, my space, who I am, why I do what I do, the way that I do it. I've always wanted a career on the internet. I've always longed for a career on the internet because I knew at an early age that it would allow me to do something once, record it, and then it would go out to the world and they could watch it for years and years and years and years to come. I knew that. So from the beginning, the internet seemed like a very bright place for me to be. The internet also would allow me to do my work and then close my computer, close my social media, and suffer with my mental illnesses in silence and alone. For so long, I was like, oh, I'll never reappear. I'll never go out. I'll never do this. I'll never do that. It'll always be behind the glass. And I had that philosophy because I've had some really embarrassing manic episodes in my life. I can think of two, my college experience and then my experience in New York with a friend of mine and his friends. Both experiences were very traumatic. I've written music about it. You just don't know what song it is, but one day you will. But I remember my college experience, and I remember going into the hospital, and I remember being filled with medication and coming more into myself and more into control. Because when I was manic the way that I wasn't in control. Everything was autopilot, though it was my body, my smile, my light, my image, my likeness. I wasn't in control. And I remember one time standing in front of a mirror in the hospital at about 19. And I looked at myself in the mirror, crying at where I was, how I got there, and the mess I had made of my college experience. But I didn't know I was bipolar. I didn't know I was going to have my first manic episode in school. I remember looking at myself in the mirror and saying, you let me down, and I will never trust you again. I looked myself in my eyes, in my spirit, in my face, and I said, you let me down. You embarrassed me, and I will never trust you again. And I remember in that moment, the spiritual disconnect that happened between me as a person and my soul. I remember the severing of that bond that I had always had, where I was sure of myself. I trusted myself. I believed in myself. I had magical powers even then to do things that most people could not do. And I said, I'll never trust you again. You let me down. And for years, I walked around this world disconnected from myself and making a lot of mistakes. And not just making mistakes, but trying to move forward and become something, trying business ventures and trying different things. But what no one knew is those ventures would not succeed because I no longer trusted myself. If you're going to run a business, you've got to trust your judgment. You got to trust your own mind. You've got to trust your intuition. You've got to trust the voices that you hear. Do this, do that. And I shut all of it off. So I was walking around this world for many years without my moral compass and my safety mechanism. So I got into a lot of problems, ran all the way to France, scared my family half to death. They were like, how did he get out of the country? But I did. I got out of the country like everybody else. I appeared normal. I got my passport. I got my papers. I booked a flight and I left. Scared my family because they knew I was ailing. And I got there. And at first, it was going well. It always goes well in the beginning. But as the stress and the strain start to take its toll on me, I would become detached, despondent, aloof, manic. And then the bottom would fall all out because I was no longer in control. My trauma was. So I was sent back home. I remember in Paris, I was sent home. And that one wasn't as embarrassing because no one knew me. I was in a country full of people and no one knew me. And that was kind of my design, by design. I wanted to go somewhere where no one knew me, could point fingers and say, oh, a couple of years ago, you did this and you did that and you did this. And I behaved. I was manic in Paris. And what no one tells you about mania is that your eyes are open the entire time. Your brain is on the entire time. You are seeing what you're doing. You're just powerless to stop it. You have no control. No matter how much you cry, because I cried a lot, no matter how much you cry, no matter how much you go through, you have no control. And I remember praying inside of my own self like a prisoner trapped in a body that was doing its own thing without me. But remember, I caused a disconnect early in my life. I said, I'd never trust you again. So therefore, we weren't working on the same plane, my soul and my body, this physical being. So I always said the internet saved my career. I will always say the internet saved my career because it did. Because during those formative years, when I was also in therapy and also trying to get my career together, I could come to the internet, do my job, and then not have to go anywhere, do anything. I could focus on my healing and learning about the conditions that I had, because I didn't have one, I had three. So I could learn about those conditions, do my work, close my laptop, and take time to try to rebuild the connection with myself that I had severed. Be careful what you do to you, because when you do, some of it is the hardest to undo. That disconnect was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Trying to repair it, trying to repair that disconnect, hardest thing I've ever done. Makes all the other trauma look like nothing. Look like nothing. But what I had severed with my own words and beliefs and values and system and being, no man could save me, not even myself. So the internet offered me a safe space to do my art, be my art, live my art, and then walk away and still be safe behind the glass. But you know, my therapist and my psychiatrist said these things to me because I said it first. I talked about how if I was behind the glass always, I could protect myself from me. And I also could protect other people from me as well. Because I had been a very sick person. And though I had never injured anyone, I didn't trust me around other people. And I lived my life like that for a very long time. I didn't want to spaz out. I didn't want to have a manic episode. I didn't want my illness to rise in a public place and I be embarrassed. So when I started my career on the internet, I was safe because not only was I protecting me from me and what I might do, but I was protecting the world from me and how I would act irregular. When my therapist and psychiatrist said that back to back, because my therapist said, you're protecting people from you. And then my therapist said, you're protecting you from you. It hit really hard. Now, I still want a career on the internet, but I have to realize and come to the realization that I've done a lot of work, and I'll get to that, which protects you from me and me from me. There are things in place. So let me go back. So for a lot of my life, I didn't have help of any kind. There were no resources of any kind for me, being one of 4 grandchildren in the family at that time. We were the only children because my aunts and uncles were gay and lesbian. They had no children. My mother was the only one that had 4 children. And I remember being passed around, people trying to step in and help, but raising 4 children that were exhibiting signs of mental illness even when we were younger was terrible. People didn't understand why we didn't listen, or why we acted out so much, or why we were so loud, or why we were so bad. There were a lot of traumas going on in each and every one of us. So factor in that each and every one of us today has a form of mental illness, each and every one of us, all 4 of us. But also, we were being molested and no one knew. We didn't even know that each other was going through the issue. We didn't even talk like that. And it is so insane how 4 children can live in a house and love each other and be brother and sister and not even tell each other what's happening to them. We were being raped and molested by people coming in and out of the house, people coming in and out of our lives. And we held all of that to ourselves. We hid it from us and we hid it from each other. So, my grandmother was one lady, one woman. She had worked so hard for her associate's degree, and then her bachelor's degree in education, and then her master's degree in education. She had finally gotten out because my grandfather left her with 5 small children. She wanted to be a doctor, but she just could not be away from her children that much and for that long. There were 5 of them. And then factor in that her younger sister and younger brother came to live with her as well. So there were 7 children she had to take care of while she was trying to go to school to get a better placement in life. And she did that, cared for 7 children, and still went and got her associates, her bachelor's and her master's degree in education, and stopped 32 credits shy of her doctorate because she got really, really sick in her body. Of course she would. And had to have an abdominal hysterectomy. Of course she would. She was killing herself. She was killing herself. pushing herself beyond human limitations. She says to me today that she doesn't even understand how she did it. And I'm with her because I can't see a way. It was hard enough for me to take care of me. It was hard enough for me to deal with my angst. So 7 people, including herself and a husband that had been to Vietnam, that came in and out of the picture, yet was never present for a single birth of any of the children she gave him. My grandmother told me that. I never knew that. He didn't come to not one hospital birthing of his 5 children. Not a single one. He left her alone to deal with childbirth and bringing his babies into the world. So fast forward to me now. I hadn't had any kind of help like that. There were no resources growing up. And then something magical happened. I got put out of the house. I drifted for a couple of years around. My career was on hold at that point because I didn't have any money. I didn't have anything. And my mental illness was out of control because I wasn't on medication or in therapy. No outpatient care. Now, mind you, by that time, I had known that I had it, but I was trying to act normal. I was trying to be normal. Oh, I was saying to myself, there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me. Lying to myself. I'm just like everyone else. I fit in like everyone else. I don't know what goes on. I have times where I have to disappear, and I would do that. I disappear for some time, long times, sometimes about a year. And then I resurface, beautiful, ready to work, and ready to take the next step to advance my career. But after a while, those disappearances, people start to notice, and they start to take a toll on you. And you realize, I can't live like this anymore. I was in my late 20s, mid-20s, actually. And I came to YouTube for the first time, and I was singing my heart out. My voice cracked the internet like you crack a mic. And people heard me for the first time singing. And it brought me so much attention so quickly that it triggered me. And I lasted about a year before I started to unravel in front of my public. But you know, by that time, I had had help as well. I was being bullied by someone in Hollywood whom thought they had a higher status than me, that they could erase me, that they could stop me, bar me, bring about my demise. And they did everything they could to do that. That was 16 years ago. And this person is still tampering. But my empire has gotten stronger. I have people that I hire now to watch and to catch and to trace and apprehend. But I said all of that to say this: because of all of these situations, the childhood, the adulthood, the embarrassment, all of those things, I didn't feel worthy of help. And I was still carrying around that childhood burden of, I have to do it myself. I have to do it myself. It has to be in my hands because I wanted to be in control. When I was manic, I was not in control and I did bad things. So I didn't want to ever not be in control, because if I was never in control or wasn't in control, it meant that I could potentially get mentally ill and do more things that were bad and negative. So I needed tight control of myself at all times. I had to have tight control of myself to make sure I didn't misbehave, to make sure I didn't act out, to make sure I could keep my illness a secret and under control. And you know, I did until I couldn't. And then time changed. I grew up. My siblings grew up. We were cast into the world with no provision, no support, and mentally ill. And I can assure you today, none of them are doing well. So for a long time, I felt guilty that I was in a position now where resources were available and that I was getting help. And for the last 16 years of my life, you have to understand this, I have had the best care, the best help, everything I've ever wanted, I got. Every pair of shoes, every wig, every dress, every lash. I'm looking around my room and all this stuff because I have to prepare to move it out of here. Next stop is a condo in the sky. Everything I ever wanted was provided for me and has been provided for me for the last 16 years. And I felt unworthy. I felt like, though I wanted help and prayed for help for many years, even when I was younger, that I didn't deserve it because it never came. And when it came, I was so scared that I would lose it, that I used to check to see if my grandmother was breathing in the middle of the night. I was so hypervigilant to make sure she was okay because she was the only one who ever really helped me. And I don't mean, somebody helps you across the street, somebody gives you a place to stay, you stay on a couch, that's great, but you're stationary. You don't have what you need to move forward. There were many people that helped me. And I say thank you to all of those people. But I was given a place to rest at that moment. But it didn't mean I could advance. My grandmother was the only one to provide me the opportunity to advance. And I felt bad about it. I cried and spent many years of those first initial years, because I've had therapy 16 years, it's going on 17. I spent those first initial years crying that I was being helped and saying that I didn't want the help. I wanted to do it myself. I needed it to be in my hands so that I could control it. Because if I could control it and get the reins of it, I was the only one that could assure I would never lose it. I was the only one that knew what I needed. So, for many, many years, I scoffed at my help angrily because it was like, it's not in my hand. So it's not really help. And I would try to tell the divine how to help me. If you want to help me, put it in my hand. Because there, I can make sure I can hold it tightly and never lose it. But we all know the parable about a hand being tightly held like this. It prevents any other blessing from getting inside. This is my lesson. I had to learn that my hands needed to be free. I didn't need to hold so tightly to anything. My hands needed to be open. because I had a great destiny and a great purpose, and blessing needed to flow through my hands to whomever needed it in the world. So I learned to deal with my survivor's guilt. I learned to deal with my family being jealous of the fact that I had my grandmother's help and favor, and that I was being blessed by her. I endured the taunting, the talking, the pain, the fights. I endured all of that. Through that all, my grandmother never stopped providing for me. There was only one time that she stopped providing for me because it was a very expensive bill. And if she didn't stop, it would have caused the whole house to go under. In layman's terms, we were about to lose it all because the price of the business was so much and it was such an undertaking. Your dreams are going to cost a shitload of money. So you better quit going to the clubs. You better learn to downsize your alcohol. You better learn to buy less weed. Because if you're by yourself, oh, it's going to take every extra dime. And some dimes allotted for other things in your life, oh, it's going to take that too. That's just a warning for you. If you think that you're going to be able to just control because you've got some resources, building a business or following a dream, I'll tell you one thing you can never plan for, and that's unexpected occurrences. And I've had many that I had to throw money at to fix. You're going to need that money. You're going to need it, especially if you're by yourself and have no backup. So I recently got depressed about it. I need it in my hand. I need to control it. I can never lose it if it's in my hand. I would take good care of it if it's in my hand. And you know what my grandmother used to always say to me when I would say that to her, screaming and hysterically crying and going crazy around this house? She would look at me and say, one day you will have it, just not today. And then she would follow up by saying, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're not capable of managing it. It doesn't mean that you're not worthy of having it. It just means not today. She would always say that to me so calm. And my grandmother would say to me, baby, as long as I have money, you have money. She recently said that to me. But I fell into the depression not too long ago because I felt like I'm tired of having my grandmother help me. It's time for me to have my own. I'm 40 years old. It's time for me to have my own and to be completely in control, even financially, of my own destiny. And you know what my grandmother said to me? You are in control. She said, I just merely gave you the money. You built the business. It's yours. And then she went on to further say, and I wanted it to be that way. What I didn't realize is I was feeling bad for something I didn't need to feel bad for. The shame was that I wanted the opposite. No help. And then the divine spoke to me and said, sweetie, how do you think generational wealth is born? If you're blessed enough to be born to two parents with two streams of income in your home, they can help support you to get to the levels in life that you need to get to. unbeknownst to me, and I had friends in the suburbs, and I didn't even think about this. Um, their parents paid for college. It was their parents' responsibility to help them get to the next level. Their parents took the responsibility of helping them get to the next level. Why? Because their parents loved them and wanted to see them succeed. That's how generational wealth is built. I work so you don't have to do this type of work. You can stand on my shoulders and you can get ahead, whereas it would have taken you twice the years to do it had you had to start at the very, 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 very bottom with no provision. And I knew, because for many years of my career, I was at the very, very, very bottom. I had no provision. And then 16 years ago, God sent me to my grandmother, and she had retired, and she had IRAs and 401ks and all these things because she was very savvy with money. She's always been. And she was able to give me the help I prayed for as a child and never received. And then my therapist and psychiatrist drove home the point that, baby, you're upset that now you're being helped like a young person that had two parents, that needed money for tuition, that needed schooling and needed all of this extra stuff. You're actually upset now that you feel guilty. Let's use that word. You feel guilty now that you are just like your classmates that you had in high school, and college, who you saw their mothers and fathers lovingly care about their children. I always said I could tell the difference between a child that was wanted and a child that was had by mistake. A lot of Black people, not all, a lot of Black people, we have our children by mistake. They are not wanted. They just become additions to our lives, like handbags or tube socks. And they're treated as such. Now, there is a maternal love there. There is. But for the most part, those children suffer because of a lack of provision. I was one of them. And what caused me to be raised out of my depression was that when I looked at it and I remembered all those years ago being in school, watching my friends be supported by their families, eating at their dinner tables, going out with them and having no money and having their parents pay for me as well. And I wasn't a little kid. I'm talking 16, 17. This happened. I was like 21 and had no money. And their parents shared what they had so that I could have the experience of whatever we were doing. Little did I know that they wanted me to have the experience so that it would drive me and so that it would allow me to never give up hope. To know that just because I started like this in the world didn't mean that I had to stay like that. That if I worked really, really hard, I too could climb out of the poverty, the jaws of poverty. When I realized all of this and realized that I was being helped the way I had never been helped in my life, that I was now like my friends at 40, they had it a lot earlier. Yes, their parents cared for them, but guess what? Better late than never, right? Better late than never. My grandmother does everything for me. She does. She does everything for me. Everything. Even when it came to therapy, my grandmother would drive me to my therapy session for 16 years and sit out in the car in the rain, snow, shine, and whatever else are the elements, and wait for me to do my hour with my therapist and psychiatrist. I now am the baby at 40 whose parents planned to have him, whose parents made provision to have him. And in so doing, my grandmother ushered me into generational wealth. I had never seen it before. I didn't realize that this is what Caucasians and affluent Blacks and other races are doing. Their parents work, make all this money, and they pass it down through the children from one generation to the next. It's how generational wealth is born and carried. And with me, my grandmother broke, along with me, every generational curse ever casted upon me. Every single one. She broke them all. And you know, I would often say, because of the survivor's guilt, well, what was the difference? Why didn't my siblings get it? My siblings weren't like me. They weren't coachable, teachable. There was something about being mentally ill and a late bloomer in life. I was still, and I still am, very childlike in some regards. I'm very grown in others. But I have this need for information, this need to learn. I am a student of life. I am an eternal student of life. I learn and I learn and I learn and I learn, and I always want to learn. I will never stop learning. If I see it, I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to learn. It's going to make me grow. I'm going to add it to my arsenal of tools to help me get ahead in life and teach others how to do the same. And when I realized that my grandmother had ushered me into generational wealth, I realized that I was already mirroring her with the Queen of Shade. I was speaking support into so many of your lives. I was speaking wealth into so many of your lives, because it doesn't start with a financial coin or dollar. It starts with a mentality. What you think you are, what you think you become, what you believe will be. The mind is so powerful. So I realized all of this recently, and I said to myself, because my therapist asked me, how do you feel now that you know what it is? Now that you know that you've broken every curse in your family with your grandmother, how does it make you feel? And I replied, it doesn't make me feel pompous or arrogant. I feel grateful. I'm so grateful for the sacrifices my grandmother made to get me to where I am. And if I ever lost my grandmother, because one day that will come, let's hope it's many years from now. But if I ever lost my grandmother, I would not crumble and fall to pieces. I would keep going and show her that her sacrifices were not in vain, and that what she bestowed upon me, I could keep it going. I'm no longer afraid of whether or not my grandmother would leave me, pass on, et cetera, et cetera. Why? Because she built a foundation for me. And then once it was built, I then started to add to it, because I built my business with the money she gave me. My grandmother is my mother. My grandmother is the only mother I've ever known. And she's the only one who has consistently put into me so many gems and jewels that I can't even number them or name them. What I'm saying to you is, I may not have gone to a traditional college or university, but you can't knock my homeschooling, because I was homeschooled by a teacher with a master's degree. My knowledge and education is real. It's not just something I read in a self-help book. I literally learned. There were lessons that I learned to become who I am today. And baby, I'm too old a cat for a kitten to scratch. At 40 years old, I got these lessons, and these lessons belong to me. And I am the CEO of my company, not my grandmother, me. And because she did what she did for me and passed generational wealth to me, I will continue. And I want you to know something else. It proved something I never thought it would prove to me recently. Even this morning, as I was speaking to my therapist, it proved that because my grandmother invested in me in so many ways, not just money, time, spirit, all of these things, emotional support, all of those things, being there for me, consoling me, because she made me wealthy. It's not a question of if I'll make it. Your parents don't pay for a college degree and then say, well, if you get it. No, they paid for a college degree. You're going to get it. Follow the steps. It's yours. It's as good as yours. Why? Because it was paid for. My success was paid for. So do you know what that means? It's not if I make it. It's not when I make it. It's I'm going to make it, because I already did. I own my own business. I am a Black entrepreneur. I own my business. And it's only a matter of time before I start to get larger deals, contracts, options, and opportunities. It's not if. It's not no longer me thinking and worrying that I'm not going to make it. Oh, I'm going to make it. Why? Because it was paid for. Every single penny. My grandmommy paid for it for me. So it is mine. That's why I can sit in front of you and do this and speak so confidently. I'm not going to fail. I'm not going to fail. I will have setbacks, but I am not going to fail. What's going to happen is I am going to make it. I'm going to. It was paid for. And when I realized that this morning, it made me so thankful. Thankful for all that has been placed into me, all that all of you witness and see for yourselves that cannot be compared to anything you've ever seen before. The brand is all my own, because I now come from a lineage that paid for my higher education and my success. I'm so thankful to my grandmother and to everyone that has poured into me over the years to be a part of my success and a part of keeping me hopeful. I want to thank all of you, even my followers and supporters. You guys write me, you say, keep going, you're larger than life, you're going to make it, you're going to do this. I am going to make it. I am. Because we paid the cost to be the boss. There is no degree right now that I could receive. I'm way more capable than an associate's. I've had more than 4 years of training. I've had more than 6 years of training. I've had more than 8 years of training. 8 years is a PhD and a dissertation. I've already proven my thesis. My thesis, I've already proven it. What you might ask, what's your thesis? That I could literally take something that was not born or placed in a position where it would have everything it needed, and based on components gathered in the world, I proved that a soul, a man, a woman, a boy, a girl, could actually be given grace and grow without a traditional education or college degree. I love all of you. And so many of you are waiting on me. You know it's coming. You see it's coming. But now I definitely see it coming, because it's not if. It was already paid for. It was already paid for. The wealth was already given to me. The clients are coming. The contracts are coming. The options are right around the corner. And I'll tell you something else. I love the internet, and I will always do the majority of my work on the internet, but I'm no longer scared of me. And I'm no longer scared to show me to you or anyone out there. Because guess what? It was paid for. I haven't been hospitalized in 16 years, and I will never be hospitalized again. Why? Because I have all the tools I need to prevent hospitalization. I learned them. And they've kept me 16 years. What's the next 16? We'll work on the next 16. One step at a time. My therapist also said to me, I am the type of person where I don't need and I don't look for instant gratification. I'm always for the long haul. I know it's going to take time. I knew this was going to take time. But what my enemies didn't count on was that though I was waiting, I wouldn't just be sitting here twiddling my thumbs. I'm learning. I'm reading. I'm developing. I'm crafting more and more and more. I'm working right now. I've got so much planned. So much. I thank you for listening to me today, this special monologue. If I had 3 words that inspired me and empowered me today, it would be love, health, and wealth. Love, health, and wealth. Because those are the 3 things that today I sit here with. And nobody can take not one of them from me. Not one. And I want to encourage you before I go. You may not have a grandmommy like me. You may be the only person that ever believes in your dream or in your career that you want, your dream job. Baby, if you're willing to make the sacrifices, because nothing came easy to me, if you're willing to make the sacrifices, give up the sex, the drugs, the rock and roll, put that money aside and start slowly, not expecting to blow up in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, 365 days, and just ride it and become better. Stop looking for a point to be over. This is a constant growth process. It'll never be over. When it's over, you should be in the ground. You should be dead. Because you should be learning something new every single day for the rest of your lives. That's what I'll leave with you. But I'm so grateful for my grandmommy. Heaven knows. I'm so grateful for the wealth that I have. The wealth that you see. It's coming out, baby. It's pouring out of every orifice of my body right now. I am not the same as I was many, many moons ago. And I owe that all to the help and the provision of my grandmother, my God, And most importantly, the person we came to hear from, me. Me. Until next time, you have heard the vocal stylings of the Queen of Shade. I love you. Bye-bye now.
So did you enjoy? I hope you did. Please like, comment, subscribe, share, and don't forget to cash at me at the Queen of Shade. I am your favorite content creator, right? Right. You want to see more of this content, right? Right. Cash at me. I love you. Mwah.
I've got my black stilettos on. Don't you make me take them off. I'm assuming first position. Gonna show you I'm a